You are trying to decide between a Toyota, a Honda, and a Mazda. And what you actually want to know is which one is still worth owning 10 years from now. Not next Tuesday, not at the 3-year mark where nearly every survey quietly stops counting, but at year 10 with 150,000 miles on the clock and no warranty left to hide behind. That's what this is. By the end, you'll know which of the three has the best measured odds of getting there, which one has the weakest evidence that it will, and the exact parts and model years on each brand that decide the outcome. Not opinions, named components. Here's the thing. Nobody selling you a car wants to spend time on. The reliability scores everybody quotes are not measuring what you think they're measuring. Most of them are measuring irritation. In the biggest long-term dependability study in the country, infotainment is the single most problematic category at 56.7 problems per 100 vehicles, with exterior complaints second at 27.5. So a car can get marked down because the Bluetooth drops your phone call, and that lands in the same bucket as a bearing letting go. Those are not the same event. One annoys you at a stoplight, the other ends the car. I've had a lot of these engines on a stand, and I'll tell you my bias up front so you can weigh it. I don't care much what a car does in its first 90 days. I care what the cylinder head looks like at 140,000 miles. That's the only test that has ever mattered to me, and it's the one almost nobody runs. 3 things I'm flagging now so you can hold me to them. First, the brand that wins this comparison also replaced over 70,000 engines in its own trucks and then recalled the same engine again for the same reason. I'll give you the exact campaign and the exact count when we get to it. And it is the strongest argument I know against buying anything in its first 3 model years. Second, Mazda finished first outright in America's biggest reliability ranking within the last 6 years and now sits around 14th. 2 model names explain most of that collapse, and a third reason is a pure accounting quirk that has nothing to do with quality. Third, near the end, I'm going to read you what one of these 3 companies offered owners as a remedy for gasoline getting into their engine oil. It involved changing how they drive. That's the part that made me want to make this. Let's do the foundation, because if you skip this, the rest is just noise. There are 4 data sources anyone can check, and they disagree because they ask different questions. One asks members about up to 20 potential trouble areas, from loose interior trim to failed engines and transmissions, weights them by severity, and pulls in model years going back to 2000. That's the one people mean when they say the rankings. The second covers 184 specific problem areas and is built from 33,268 original owners of 3-year-old cars. 3 years. That's not a decade. The third measures problems in the first 90 days of ownership, which tells you about the factory and the software, and essentially nothing about metal fatigue. Then there's the fourth one, and it's the only one built to answer our actual question. It analyzed close to 400 million vehicles and modeled which ones are most likely to still be running at 250,000 miles. Odometers, not opinions. The average vehicle on the road has about a 4.8% chance of getting there, under 5 in 100. Sit with that number because it reframes everything. A reliable car in America is a statistical outlier by definition. The mechanism you need in your head is simple. At 10 years, cars don't die of 1,000 small faults. They die of one of 3 things. A wear item that costs more to fix than the car is worth. A design decision made to buy a fraction of a mile per gallon that quietly eats a bearing surface or a piston ring for 10 years. Or corrosion, which ends more cars in the northern half of this country than any engine failure ever will. By the way, if you drive a Toyota and want to keep it running for hundreds of thousands of miles, what you do before something breaks matters far more than most owners realize. That's why I put together the 500K Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your Toyota last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot mechanic upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera, or grab it from the first pinned comment below. And the running theme, the one thread I want you to follow through all three brands. Every serious 10-year liability I'm about to name came from complexity, added in pursuit of fuel economy. Not one of them came from a company trying to build something worse. That's what makes it interesting instead of just annoying. Toyota first, because it's the reference point, and because the reference point is more complicated than the reputation. The survey position is genuine. Toyota tops the current brand reliability rankings at 66, ahead of Subaru at 63, Lexus at 60, and Honda at 59. Even Toyota takes hits after redesigns. The Camry dropped to average after its 2025 redesign with a score of 56 and has since climbed back to 74. Fine. But the survey isn't why I'd bet on a Toyota at year 10. The odometer data is. In the longest-lasting study, only 4 brands rank above the industry average for predicted lifespan, and among non-luxury brands, only 2 clear it: Toyota and Honda. Toyota's predicted rate of reaching 250,000 miles is 17.8%, nearly 4 times the industry average. The Sequoia leads every vehicle sold at 39.1%. Toyota holds 10 of the top 25 slots, and Honda is second with 5. 2 engineering decisions are doing most of that work, and they're both boring, which is the point. The first is how Toyota feeds fuel into its 4 cylinders and V6s. The system uses port injection and direct injection together, which lets the engine run the high compression of direct injection while avoiding the classic modern failure: carbon caked onto the back of the intake valves. The port injectors spray near the intake valve and wash away the light deposits that build up on direct injection-only engines. Now, the honest caveat, because I've seen people repeat this like it's magic, it does not make carbon buildup impossible. Oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system, stretched oil changes, and endless short trips still put deposits in there. It buys you a lot. It doesn't buy you immunity. The second is the hybrid drivetrain. And this is the part that still surprises people who assume more parts means more failure. There's no starter motor grinding, no conventional automatic with clutch packs, no alternator belt, and the gas engine spends its life running in the load range it likes. Toyota also carries the longest battery warranty in the segment at 10 years and 150,000 miles, with hybrid components covered for 8. And when it does eventually need a pack, because it will someday, the figures cited run roughly $3,000 to $8,000 at a dealer, dropping to $1,500 to $3,500 for a refurbished one. That's a real bill. It's also a bill that arrives once, at year 12 or 15, on a car that's still worth driving. Now, the loop I promised, and I'm paying it in full because Toyota's reputation should not protect it. In July 2024, Toyota announced it would replace the engines in about 112,000 Tundra pickups and Lexus LX 600 SUVs, because machining debris left behind during manufacturing could stick to the crankshaft main bearings and destroy them. Toyota committed to replacing engines in 100 to 2,092 vehicles under that campaign, not repairing, replacing. Toyota's own estimate was that only around 1% were actually affected. They replaced the lot anyway, which I'll credit them for. Then it happened again. A second recall, issued November 6, 2025, covered 126 691 Toyota and Lexus vehicles with the same engine after Toyota determined the earlier corrective action hadn't fully addressed the underlying defect. 2022 through 2024. Tundra 2022 through 2024 Lexus LX and the 2024 Lexus GX, with Toyota saying it was still developing a remedy and owners would be notified by early January 2026. Across 3 campaigns, more than 270,000 trucks and SUVs are affected. Over 70,000 engines have already been replaced, and owners in the newest wave were still waiting to learn what their remedy would even be. The failure itself, debris sticking to the number 1 main bearing, which fails under sustained high load. Why the debris kept getting through after the first fix has never been properly explained in public, and I'm not going to invent a reason for you. I've asked people who'd normally know and got shoulders. What I will say is this. It's the twin-turbo V6 that replaced the V8. It exists because a V8 couldn't hit the fuel economy numbers, and engines built with the redesigned number 1 bearing from July 2024 onward, plus all replacement engines, are outside the recall population, which is the whole argument for buying the 4th year of a design instead of the first. Toyota's other 10-year weak spot is oil, not bearings. Toyota offered a warranty enhancement of 10 years, or 150,000 miles on 2010 through 2014 models with the 2.5-liter 2AR FE engine, covering piston rings, valve seals, and the PCV valve. The rings were thin, low-tension oil control rings that wear early and let oil into the combustion chamber, and Toyota acknowledged it in a service bulletin. That coverage window has now closed for nearly every car it applied to. If you're looking at a used Camry or RAV4 from that era, that's your inspection point, and the giveaway is a dipstick that's low 5,000 miles after an oil change with nothing on the driveway. Honda next. Honda is the split verdict of this comparison, and both halves are real. The short-term numbers are the best of the 3. Honda posted the strongest initial quality score of the group at 179 problems per 100 vehicles, and on repair invoice data, Honda ranks first out of 32 brands, with an average annual repair cost of $428, about 0.3 shop visits a year, and a 10% chance of any given repair being severe, against an all-brand average of $652. And on the odometer test, it's the only non-luxury brand besides Toyota above average. The engine that earned that reputation is the 3.5-liter V6. Look at how many owners of older cars with it have gone well past 200,000 miles on not much more than routine servicing. That's not marketing. That's what's parked outside. But it has one specific liability, and it's the fuel economy feature. Early versions with cylinder deactivation were known for fouling spark plugs and heavy oil consumption, and some owners disable the system because of it. Engine mounts wear out prematurely, sometimes before 100,000 miles, to the point that mount replacement became a rite of passage among Odyssey and Pilot owners. The constant switching between modes is blamed for uneven cylinder temperatures, accelerated piston ring wear, sticking rocker arms, and oil getting into the solenoid connectors. Honda did later simplify the system and improve the rings and oil control. It also dropped the V6 out of the Accord entirely in favor of Turbo 4s. Read that last sentence as an engineering verdict, because that's what it is. Which brings us to the Turbo 4s and the thing I'll come back to at the end. The transmission question, quickly. because it's shorter than people expect. Honda's continuously variable transmission is the best of a bad reputation. Independent data puts Honda's CVT failure rate below Nissan's and Subaru's, while Toyota still leads. With proper maintenance, they run 150,000 to 200,000 miles or more. Neglected ones, or ones filled with the wrong fluid, can start acting up as early as 60,000 to 80,000. Honda has issued warranty extensions and bulletins covering torque converter shutter on certain Civic, HR-V, and Fit years. Here's the part that costs people transmissions. Honda uses its maintenance reminder logic instead of a fixed interval, which is fine in theory, except that in the real world the fluid shears down, absorbs debris, and loses its friction characteristics. The shops that see the failures land closer to every 30,000 to 40,000 miles. If you own one, that's your number, not the dash light's number. Still with me? Good. 2 brands down, 1 left, plus the part I actually built this around. If you're getting something out of this, subscribe. That's the whole ask, and it takes 2 seconds. Because next up is the brand that was ranked number 1 in America inside the last 6 years and has since fallen further than any mainstream brand in a single year. And I'm going to show you the internal service document that explains a chunk of it. Mazda. And I want to be careful here because Mazda owners are the most justifiably loyal people in this comparison, and some of them are going to be annoyed with me. Come argue. Bring mileage. Mazda topped the annual brand report card for the first time ever a few years back, with BMW, Subaru, Porsche, and Honda rounding out that top 5. It was named the number 1 most reliable automaker of 2020. That happened. It was earned. Now it's the brand with the biggest drop in the current rankings, falling 8 spots, from 6th to 14th. The steepest one-year fall among mainstream brands. 3 reasons, exactly as promised. Reasons 1 and 2 are model names. The CX-70 and CX-90 are offered as gas-only and as plug-in hybrids. They kept showing the same problems the survey found the year before, and every version scored below or well below average. Plug-in hybrids as a category show about 23% more problems than pure electric cars. And in the 3-year dependability, data plugins scored 281 problems per 100 against 198 for plain gasoline vehicles. Mazda bet on the worst scoring powertrain type in the industry at exactly the wrong moment. That's a strategy error, not a workmanship error, but you're the one who pays for it. Reason 3 is the accounting quirk, and it's the one nobody mentions. Part of Mazda's further hit came because the CX-5, a vehicle that had proved very reliable for 11 straight years, was being redesigned so it isn't counted in the new predicted reliability ratings at all. Mazda's best long-term product was pulled out of the average. Meanwhile, the Mazda 3 rated above average, and the CX-30, CX-50, and CX-50 hybrid came in average. So the brand number is being dragged by 2 large SUVs, while the cars most people actually buy are fine. Now the document. Mazda introduced cylinder deactivation on the 2.5-liter Skyactiv G in 2018, making it the only automaker offering 4-cylinder deactivation in North America, and the engineering challenge they named themselves was that an engine running on 2 cylinders is more likely to vibrate. Chasing fuel economy again. Same story as Honda's V6, different hardware. Mazda's own service alert covers 2018 through 2020 CX-5, 2018 through 2020 Mazda 6, and 2019 through 2020 Mazda 3, with cylinder deactivation only, and the search keywords on it read cam journal, valve guide, intake valve, valve spring, hydraulic lifter, coolant leak, warped head, oil leak, misfire, low compression, burnt valves, rocker arm. A new cylinder head assembly was established as a service part specifically for the 2.5 with cylinder deactivation. A later revision added 2020 to 2021 CX30. And at one point, the bulletin carried a note that due to a supply issue for cylinder heads, gasket sets, and partial engines, dealers had to call the hotline for repair guidance. I want to be straight about my standing here. I've had far more of Honda's small turbos apart than Mazda's deactivation heads, so I'm reading a paper trail more than my own bench on this one. But you don't establish a new cylinder head assembly as a service part on one engine variant and then run out of them, unless you're replacing a meaningful number of heads. Mazda also updated the cylinder head and exhaust manifold gasket on the Turbo 2.5 from the 2021 model year to address cracked heads. That's the tell. Same lesson as Toyota's bearing. The later years of a design are the ones you want. The other Mazda 10-year issue is the one that ends cars quietly. Mazda recalled about 49,000 2009 and 2010 Mazda 6 sedans registered in 22 states and the District of Columbia where road salt is used because the front suspension subframe crossmember was susceptible to corrosion severe enough that suspension components could separate from the vehicle. That was later expanded to roughly 49,239 of the 2011 to 2013 Mazda 6. And the federal investigation file is grim reading. 53 non-duplicate reports of the front crossmember corroding to the point of complete or partial separation of steering or suspension components, plus another 98 reports of premature or excessive corrosion without separation. That's 108.6 reports per 100,000 across the recalled population, and 307.3 per 100,000 once you narrow it to the salt region. If you're in the salt belt, that history should weigh more with you than any survey score, because a rotten subframe totals a car that has a perfectly good engine in it. Here's where the sources actually fight each other, and I'll show you my work instead of picking the tidy answer. On the 3-year dependability study, 2 write-ups put Mazda at 210 problems per 100 vehicles, slightly worse than the industry average of 204. But a third summary lists Subaru, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, and Mazda as all finishing above that average. Both can't be right. I'm taking the conservative reading, Mazda around average, not a standout. Because 2 sources give a hard number and the third gives a grouping. For context, Toyota came in at 185, 4th among mass market brands and 8th overall, behind Buick at 160, Mini at 168, and Chevrolet at 178. Yes, Buick and Mini beat Toyota on that particular measure. That's how much these studies depend on what they choose to count. One more thing on the odometer study, and this is my read rather than a finding. Mazda sits below average on 250,000 mile survival. And I don't think that's mostly about how Mazdas are built. SUVs took 11 of the top 25 spots. And the study's own authors note that heavy-duty trucks are engineered for long lives and often used as fleet vehicles that don't reflect consumer buying at all. Their analyst says outright that a lower chance of hitting 250,000 miles often reflects how owners use the vehicle rather than how well it was built. Mazda sells no full-size trucks. Toyota's number is propped up by the Sequoia, Tundra, Tacoma, and 4Runner. Strip the trucks out and the gap narrows a lot. I can't prove that with a published figure, so treat it as a mechanic's suspicion, not a fact. And the repair cost picture is closer than any of the rankings suggest. Mazda averages 462 hours a year, with about 0.4 shop visits and a 10% chance of a severe repair against Toyota's $441 and a 12% severe repair probability, $21 a year apart. Those are not 3 different worlds. They're 3 neighbors. Now, the part I've been walking toward. Somebody decided what your engine was allowed to do wrong, and then decided what you'd be offered when it did it. Here's the sequence. From filings and settlements, you can pull up yourself. Honda's 1.5-liter turbo direct injection 4 is in a very large number of Civics, CR-Vs, and Accords, and it has a documented tendency to put gasoline into the engine oil. According to a class action complaint, Honda acknowledged in an October 2018 letter to dealerships that the engines may experience engine oil dilution, and that this may result in increased oil level and can cause a misfire. The plaintiffs described what that does. The crankcase overfills with fuel-contaminated oil, which becomes aerated and foamy when the crankshaft hits it, leading to insufficient lubrication and overheating. Foamy oil doesn't carry a bearing. That's not a theory. That's hydrodynamics. In September 2020, a federal judge in Minnesota granted final approval to a nationwide settlement covering 2017 and 2018 CR-V models, extending the powertrain warranty by 1 year or 20,000 miles and providing reimbursement for related repairs. In China, Honda recalled around 130,000 vehicles for the same engine and the same problem. Now here's the part that got me. Before any of that, when the reports were piling up in cold weather states, one of the things offered to owners was guidance about how they were driving. Take longer trips. Don't do so many short, cold start runs. Let it warm up properly. And look, as physics, that's true. Direct injection sprays fuel straight into the cylinder at very high pressure. A cold cylinder wall doesn't vaporize all of it. The unburned portion runs down past the rings and mixes with your oil, and a hot engine on a long drive will boil most of it back out. The mechanism is real. But read what's actually being said to you. You bought a compact car, marketed for commuting, sold in states where it is below freezing for 4 months a year, and the remedy on offer was to change your life to suit the engine. Not a hardware revision, not a different piston ring package. A suggestion that your driving was the variable at fault. Honda did later revise things. Software for the warm-up cycle, changes to the cooling and oil systems in some markets, a longer warranty in the settlement. But the first answer was you. And don't miss why that engine exists at all. It replaced a naturally aspirated 2.4 that would have run for 200,000 miles without ever contaminating its own oil, because a small turbocharged engine tests better on the fuel economy cycle. The specification for how much fuel is acceptable in your crankcase wasn't written by you and wasn't written for you. It was written by people whose job was to hit a number. And the line they drew put the wear on your bearings instead of on their compliance report. Same shape at Mazda. Cylinder deactivation on a 4-cylinder existed to claw back a fraction of a mile per gallon, and the cost showed up as valve guides, hydraulic lifters, burnt valves, and a cylinder head assembly they had to invent as a service part and then couldn't keep in stock. Same shape at Honda's V6, deactivation, fouled plugs, oil consumption, mounts hammered out before 100,000 miles. Same shape at Toyota, a twin-turbo V6 that replaced a V8 for economy reasons, and machining debris in the main bearings of 270,000 trucks twice. 3 different companies, 3 different sets of hardware, 1 identical decision made independently, 3 times. Buy the fuel economy number, pay for it with your long-term durability, and describe the whole thing as progress. I don't think any of those engineers wanted to build something that fails, but nobody in that room is paid for what your car does at year 11, and everybody in that room is paid for what it does on the test cycle. That's not a conspiracy. It's an incentive, and incentives don't need a villain to do damage. The useful part for you is that this is completely visible from the outside once you know what you're looking at. Anytime you see a smaller engine doing the job a bigger one used to do, or a system that turns cylinders off, or a first-year version of anything, you're looking at durability that was traded for a lab number. It won't fool you again. Let me pull the altitude down before we finish, because there's something in all this I actually like. The reason a Toyota hybrid tends to outlast the fancier thing next to it is not that Toyota has a secret. It's that somebody made the decision to keep a system simple enough to survive being ignored. No belt to snap, no starter to grind, no clutch pack to cook. That's not conservatism. That's a kind of respect. Designing for the owner who won't read the manual, won't service it early, and will keep it for 12 years. Because that's what real life looks like. And the flip side is what happens when you understand a machine rather than just owning one. The person who knows that a Honda CVT wants fluid at 35,000 miles regardless of what the dash says, or that a 2AR FE Camry needs its dipstick checked between changes, or that a Mazda 6 in a salt state needs somebody under it with a flashlight looking at the crossmember. That person will get 15 years out of a car somebody else scraps at 9. Same car, same parts, different owner. It's knowing which one thing is going to try to kill it and getting there first. That's really the only durable advantage available to any of us. Not buying the right brand, knowing the specific failure. So here's the whole thing in order. And this is the part worth writing down. Best measured odds at 10 years and beyond. Toyota. 17.8% predicted to reach 250,000 miles. First in the current brand rankings at 66, and the Port Plus direct injection setup meaningfully reduces intake valve carbon. Best short-term quality and lowest measured repair cost. Honda. First out of 32 brands on repair invoices at $428 a year, and the strongest initial quality of the three at 179 problems per 100. Weakest current survey evidence, Mazda down 8 places to 14th, dragged by the CX-70 and CX-90, and by the CX-5 being pulled from the ratings mid-redesign. But with the Mazda 3 above average, the CX-30, CX-50, and CX-50 hybrid average, and annual repair costs within $21 of Toyota's. Now the procedure, because a ranking is advice, and a procedure is a tool. Run this on whatever specific car is in front of you. Step 1. Find out how long that exact engine and transmission combination has been in production. Not the model, the powertrain. Under 3 years, walk away or accept that you're the test fleet. Toyota's Tundra V6 is a 270,000 vehicle argument for that rule, and Mazda's Turbo 2.5 got its revised head and manifold gasket in 2021 for the same reason. Step 2. Search the model, year and engine along with the words service bulletin and warranty extension. A manufacturer paying to extend coverage is a company admitting something in writing. Toyota did it for 10 years and 150,000 miles on the 2ARFE's piston rings and valve seals. Honda did it on CVT Torquey converter shutter for certain Civic, HRV, and Fit years. Those documents are the honest version of a reliability score. Step 3. Ask whether the engine turns cylinders off. If it does, that system is your primary long-term liability. Honda's V6 and Mazda's 2.5 both prove it. And you want the latest revision of it, not the first. Step 4. If you live anywhere salt is used, get the car on a lift before you buy it and look at the subframe and crossmember, not the rocker panels. Mazda's own recall population ran at 307 corrosion reports per 100,000 in the salt region. Russ doesn't care what the engine's reputation is. Step 5. Price the 2 big-ticket items before you sign. Hybrid battery, $3,000 to $8,000 at a dealer, $1,500 to $3,500 refurbished, under a warranty that runs 10 years and 150,000 miles. Transmission fluid every $30,000 to $40,000 on a CVT. If both of those fit inside what you'd otherwise spend on payments for a newer car, you have your answer. Run those 5 steps, and you'll beat every buyer at the dealership who came in knowing only which badge is supposed to be reliable, including, quite often, the person selling it to you. Do that this weekend, and here's what you'll have by Sunday night. A printed list of every bulletin and warranty extension on the exact car you're considering, a photo of its subframe, and a number for what its worst plausible repair costs. That's 3 hours of work that decides the next 10 years. Now, the people I want to hear from. If you're running a Honda 1.5 turbo in a cold state, I want to know what your oil level does over a winter and what your dipstick smells like. Because owner reports on that engine are all over the map, and I'd rather have 50 of yours than another press release. And if you've got a deactivation-equipped Mazda 2.5 past 150,000 with the original cylinder head, say so plainly with the mileage, because that's evidence against what I just told you, and I genuinely like to be wrong about it. Tell me your mileage, not your feelings about the brand, the odometer, the year, the engine, and what you've replaced. 50 of those in the comments is worth more than any study I quoted today. And I read them. All of them. It's the best part of doing this. If you want more of this sort of thing, subscribing is how it finds you. And here's the thread I deliberately didn't pull today. Every one of these 3 companies has at least one engine that was quietly better than the one that replaced it. A naturally aspirated 4 or an old V6 that had no clever features, made less power, tested worse, and simply refused to die. I keep running into them on the lift, and I keep not being able to buy a new one. I'm working on how to tell that story properly, because I don't think it's nostalgia, and I don't yet have the numbers to prove it isn't. Until then, check the bulletins, check the subframe, and buy the 4th year of anything.